have a situation we wanted to talk about today, and this, believe it or not, comes from our good friend Bill Murray, who wrote us. He's been a friend of the show for a long time, and we're appreciative of that. He says back in the 90s on WGST, that was a long time ago, Dr. Gene taught us to dollar cost average into the Vanguard Index Trust 500. I'm very happy that I followed his advice. 30 years later, I'm contemplating withdrawals from a Vanguard brokerage account, a traditional IRA, and a Roth IRA, so he's diversified pretty well. All three of them are invested in diversified equity mutual funds. In what order should one tap his funds? Please comment on good exit strategies for senior citizens. Bill, are you really a senior citizen? I mean, surely you're a young, vibrant guy. Don't be so harsh on yourself. Leaving an inheritance for the next generation is not a prime objective. So I don't pretend to know anybody's situation, but it is a great question, right? So you got taxable, you've got a traditional IRA, which is the money goes in pre-tax, right? You don't get taxed.
And then you have to take that out at 72. You have to start taking required minimum distributions.
Right.
So Bill, the first thing I'd say to you is if you are 72, then, that would be the first place I would start and take your required minimum distribution.
Yeah, it's a regulation that you must follow, except last year. And this new administration hasn't said anything about, extending that to this year. Right, yeah. So we assume we're back to normal, right?
We do at this point. I mean, I've gotten a lot of client questions about that, not to digress off this topic, but a lot of people have asked about that so far. Nothing with that. So
okay.
Start there. And then...
and you do that because you're absolutely required to take that.
Right.
So, that's why we want that to be the first place. But if you're not 72 yet, then where would you take it from?
Definitely would start with the taxable account, the brokerage
right.
account. Start there. And we hope that you have, some of this money set aside in fixed income. And like you said, you've listened to the show for a long time, so you know our 10-year rule philosophy and know that we think that any money that you need to spend within the next 10 years needs to be in fixed income investments. So we're hoping that you're, taken from that bucket and, not having to sell any stock to do this. The Roth is the last place that we would advise you to take it. That's not going to be taxed to you at all. It continues to grow tax-free without any issue. Jennifer, I'm pretty sure that you and I can talk about this case study till we're blue in the face.
I know.
Pretty much.
Yep.
One
thing that I'll
just
mention, not to cut you off there, but one of the things that he really pointed out is leaving an inheritance for the next generation is not a prime objective. So while the normal way that we would pull money is that you pull money from the taxable first until you reach the age of when you have to take a required minimum distribution. Then you're going to take it from the IRA first. And then if you needed more money, you would supplement it from the taxable account. And the last place, as Michael mentioned, would be that you take it from the Roth. But if he's not trying to leave any money for the next generation, he could, after his required minimum distribution, look at his tax bracket and see if I took, if he needed additional money, maybe pulling a portion from the taxable, but then pulling another portion from the Roth would keep him in a lower tax bracket. So he could kind of play around with that a little bit.
So is there a theory behind why we would use the taxable first? Is it?
Well, the money in the retirement accounts is growing tax-free.
Okay.
So we typically leave that in there as long as possible.
I see. Just to let it grow without the burden of tax.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And one of the main reasons for the Roth is that you're leaving it for your heirs, and they wouldn't have to pay tax on it when they made the withdrawal.
Gotcha.
Correct. But if you don't want to leave it to any heirs, I can certainly tell you how to spell my name, or take a little bit from each account, making sure that you satisfy the required minimum distribution.
This is the
being
part of the
most important
show that Michael is now using to fund his child's education.
Hey,
his,
you know what?
His soon-to-be first daughter's education.
Got to do it somehow, Troy.
Yeah. One other thing I would mention is that if the goal really is, one of, a lot of people want to pass away and have like an owe $1 at the end. They want to
Right,
make
yeah.
sure that they've spent everything.
The last
So,
check
I mean,
bounces
if
concept.
your goal is really to try to, if his goal is really to try to spend as much of the money as possible, he might want to have a set of financial plans run to kind of give him an idea of, whether his funds based on what he's currently spending are going to be, or are they going to last through his life expectancy, or are they going to continue to grow and where he could actually be using more money right now if he wanted to.
Absolutely. We run our plans to show our clients spending what they tell us they spend, and then it also has a max spending number, and that's kind of what Jennifer's alluding to. So, if he had a financial plan run, and it could show, well, you're spending $50,000 a year, but you can actually spend $100,000. And if he really doesn't want to leave any money to his heirs or to anyone else at his passing, then maybe he should start spending $100,000.
Gotcha.
Because if you're really spending 50 and you can spend 100, that 100 number is just going to continue to grow because you're not depleting any assets. They're growing faster than you can spend them.
I gotcha. You guys usually run that projection out to like the age of 92. Is that correct?
We do,
Yeah.
and then if we need to, we also extend it out, to sometimes possibly 100, depending on the age of the client.
Yeah. But, I mean, we could just talk in general, like if you're not at RMD age, or you're not at the age where you have to make a mandatory withdrawal, then we would recommend that you pull from your taxable accounts first. But if you're of RMD age, then we recommend that you take your RMD, and then if you need money to supplement it. The one thing that I thought about is because if he really truly doesn't care about, and what I was going to say is if he doesn't truly care about leaving it to his heirs, then, he might, if after his RMD, he could do instead of just normally we would tell people to pull from the taxable account next, he might want to look closer at his tax brackets, and he could do some from the taxable and some from the Roth to try to not put him into a higher tax bracket or, that kind of thing.
So, guys, we were talking about the situation with Bill Murray. He mentions in here something. He's got a well-diversified portfolio, but he's also got 3 different accounts. He's got a brokerage account, which is taxable, right? Mm-hmm. And he's got a traditional IRA and a Roth IRA. Does he need that many accounts? Is there some reason why?
No, it's a great thing to have. I mean, it definitely gives him different vehicles to pull from. With the money being in the traditional IRA, as we've said, that has to be pulled out at 72 now. And with having the other money in other places, it may actually help him only, he'll only have to pull the minimum distribution out of that account. That could be a smaller amount because that's going to be taxed to him at ordinary income rates when he pulls it out at 72.
So it generates income for you just as if your job.
Correct. It's almost like getting a paycheck that the government's making you take out of your retirement account.
Okay. Well, it's taxed in the same way, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And then the Roth, you don't have to pay any taxes on that. So, if he had a lot of money in the Roth, he could supplement his income by pulling from that account, and that wouldn't have a tax impact on him. And then obviously the taxable account, that money, you can pull that in and out, but if you sell stocks in there, you do have to pay capital gains tax on the any gain associated with the stock in that portfolio.
Right. There's been some rumors that we might see a change in the way that capital gains are taxed at some point.
We keep hearing that.
Yeah.
I keep getting a lot of questions about that, but until it happens, we don't really know.
Right. All right.
Well, and, and even if it changes now, which it has changed in the past, then it can change again. But we're always looking at whatever the current tax law is. But currently, if you have losses, you can offset gains with losses. So you can use a strategy where you're selling a stock while it's down to offset some of your gains, wait 31 days, then buy it back. That would take away some of the gains, and you could reinvest it into that same stock if you continue to want to hold it. But having the different accounts gives you the flexibility based on whatever the current laws are at the time or your current situation and whether or not it's going to put you into a higher tax bracket if you do something. Just having that diversification between accounts just gives you that flexibility of being able to take advantage of whatever is best for you at that time.
Well, I'll be, if I notice that you guys are talking about certain things or using too much lingo, I'm going to ask questions just to have you clarify. But
sure,
I take the dumb seat when it comes to this stuff and let y'all showcase your brilliance.
Understood.
Michael, don't hurt anybody.
I'll try not to, Troy. I mean, I do shine bright, but I'll try to tone it down.
I don't have my shades on. Jennifer, I'm glad you brought that up because it also brings another thought. Bill, in this case, has used mutual funds for his investment vehicle so that he's buying basically a portfolio of stocks. And we know last year that the S&P 500 was up. It was up 18.4%. But there were lots and lots of individual stocks that actually were negative.
Down, but...
So if you've got the mutual fund and the overall return is positive, that's a good thing. You won. But it does limit to some degree how much you can manage your tax situation. Mm-hmm. And I know we usually use individual securities, individual stocks in portfolios, basically creating a mutual fund per individual account, is probably a better way to describe that. So you might have a situation, Jennifer, as you mentioned, where you've got a gain for the year, but some of the individual pieces underlying are at a loss. And with that being the case, you could sell off some of the losers to offset the winners that you might have harvested as you rebalanced your account through the year, right?
But he might not have that.
Yeah, it sounds
not,
as if he doesn't.
He might have a
right.
fund that's down.
He could, yeah. And assuming that you dollar cost averaged in, you can use individual tax lots as
right.
well. So don't just look at the overall picture. Go back and figure out when you bought these, and there might be some times, especially if it were. If you were selling at the bottom, you might have had some losses that you could have taken during that time to rebalance your portfolio.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean it's a strategy. Like I say, it wasn't something that we had planned to talk about, but it's absolutely a legitimate situation here. And Bill, we would encourage you to figure that out. Michael, you said something earlier. There's when you talk about liquidity or the 10-year rule, how in the world do you put together a 10-year rule if you don't have a financial plan? It makes it really difficult, right?
It would make it very difficult. I mean, because we look at all of your spending, all of your income, and, what we project the accounts to grow to, and we take all that into account, and then, we show you this is what you need to set aside for 10 years of liquidity. I mean, honestly, that would be very hard to do on your own, if I could speak properly, because we build in, an inflation rate on your spending annually and everything else. I mean, that's a hard thing to do. You can say, I spend $50,000 a year, and do the math and have that set aside for 10 years, but you probably don't need that much money because you're going to be getting income off your portfolio, Social Security income,
dividends,
possibly
right?
Dividend income, Social Security income. There's other factors that go into, how much you actually need for 10 years of liquidity.
So what you're talking about is a very complex and complete financial plan.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's what we would base your the money that you need to set aside in fixed income. If you do it that efficiently, we believe that it probably allows you to help your wealth grow faster instead of just using a rule of thumb, because everybody's situation's a little bit different, and if you were making a pension, if you were drawing a pension, you might not need all that much money on a yearly basis, right?
Absolutely.
Relative to somebody that doesn't have a pension.
Absolutely. And that's why you can't just go, off a certain number. I'm 75 years old. I need to have 50% of my money in the market and 50% of my money out of the market. I mean, that's just not the way it works,
Right.
because that might not be the case. You may need more or less,
Right.
depending on, your needs.
Yeah.